Once you've installed the rain simulator, it's super easy to use. Shift-A to add a mesh, and you're going to see rain. You select that, and then it's going to bring in a rain object, which, of course, you want to pick settings for, customize to your scene, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. So what you need to know is that this is actually a plane that has a bunch of special properties to it. If I was to extend this plane and then go back to the first frame, because it's a simulation, now it's going to spawn over here. If I do like a loop cut, I could do one of these, and now the rain will spawn in this kind of L shape. So we have a spawner upon which the rain that comes out of it has these parameters. Starting off with the Z cutoff, this basically says how low can you go before the particles die off. This is so that you don't have particles going way down here and they just accumulate and they kind of leave the scene. As you increase this, you're going to see that, once it hits Z is equal to 1, for example, it exits the scene. Usually you're going to have this Z equals to 0. So it goes right on the floor or -1. Another way for particles to die is to go through a collider. So let's actually just make this as a collider. To register this, you can't just say, oh, I want the plane, but instead, this plane has to be in a collision collection, and you can have as many objects as you want in here. So if I now add this to the, if I enable the collision collection, you're now going to see this also kind of kills it. If I make this higher, you're going to see it kills it like this. If I rotate and view this, you can see it intersects, collides, and dies. Additionally, if you kind of look carefully, you're going to see there's also this additional splashing going on, which I'm going to talk about. But this is fully procedural, dynamic. Let's add some like loop cuts or something, and then do one of these, just to make it a bit more interesting. And you're going to see now it kind of goes to the shape of this. So more settings. Density, it's exactly how much rain you have. You set this to 2, you're going to have very little rain per square area. Set it to 50, much higher. I'm going to go 20. Each rain particle comes with a certain size or radius. This is more so a visual thing, but because we're doing instancing, this will affect the final render. So I like to keep those very small because really when we render, it's motion blur that's going to make it look good. So you still want them to be small. The direction, generally you want it facing down, but you can have your rain going upwards if you wanted to for some reason. But the reason I put this in here is so that you could add a bit of wind. So I can make it go a little on the X. And now you can see the rain kind of goes over here, and the stuff that doesn't collide, again, dies over here because of this Z cutoff. So this is a good way to add kind of wind or some turbulence or something like that. Along that direction, that vector that it goes, the speed defines how fast it travels. Okay, so I keep it at 0.1. This is basically how you say, is it hard or light rain, I guess. And additionally, if you want to add some randomization, you want to keep this slow. But if you increase this, you can see it kind of scatters. But if you keep it like reasonable, that is not reasonable, but something like that, it adds a little variety that wouldn't have been there otherwise. So that's kind of the properties of the rain and then how to collide it with an object. But then once we collide it, we get these like extra droplets spawned, and we want to control those. This is what I call a splash. So every time there's a rain particle that hits a surface, it's going to die, but instead, or in place of it, it's going to emit some droplets, I call them. The droplet number is how many of these are there going to be. So if I set this to a big number, like 10, things are going to look the same, but there's going to be just way more splashing going on, you can tell, rather than if I set this to 2. It's not as intense. Additionally, the lifespan is how long a splash particle can survive. So you don't want this too high, otherwise they're just going to, kind of look weird. So keep these numbers fairly low. And then finally, you have a speed multiplier for the splash, so you can have it kind of shoot out. Ideally, I'd keep it at default settings, but there is reason to keep it really low if you want to have the rain look like it kind of sticks to the surface. I'm going to increase the lifespan so we can see that a bit better. So it kind of sticks to the surface here. Let's make it very close to 0. Just for different kinds of effects, whatever it is you want here. And yeah, really the fun comes in my mind from adding colliders. So again, to add a collider, I'm going to add a monkey. It doesn't really matter what it is as long as it is in your collision collection. And now, it's kind of hard to see, but it also collides with the monkey. If you want to see some extra settings, I didn't make this explicitly clear because I think it's a bit much. But if you go to the material of the rain, which by default it has this, this kind of rain material, which would be easier to see if the radius is bigger. It has this default rain material, which is basically glass. But if you bring in this attribute, and you happen to call it splash, it's going to be blank until you set it to instancer. And this is a way, by the way, that you can separate particles that splashed versus particles that haven't. So in case you want to do different kinds of effects or whatever, just a bit of a tip. So that's kind of the essence of it. It runs on simulation nodes. You pick your settings. When you are happy with your result, I would recommend just hitting bake, and it will simulate super, super quickly, depending on how much geo you're colliding with. By the way, sometimes the shader does this. You just have to do a refresh. Okay, hopefully that helped.